Time to push it. It takes some time for hate. Never take a second of bullshit. Make them come at you straight. Somebody will catch you running, coming from a vegetable fate. Everybody has a purpose, something that can deviate. Feed the adrenaline. Keep coming back again. I can see the colors changing my invisible face. I can feel you hold me under. Nobody can feel the play. Coming just a little closer. Let me feel the breath on me. I'll tie you up for a reason. You're someone I will always need. Feed me adrenaline. Keep coming back again. Till the end, I'm turning venomous. Feed me adrenaline.
Hey guys, you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep. Seems
Cool.
good.
That is good. It is good. That is good. Everything is good because it's almost holiday time, sort of. We're getting there, like for some people, but it seems like everything is shutting down already. Like people are starting to make plans for holidays and going away and that sorts of things. So good to still be here though, despite the fact that the rest of us in the working world probably keep grinding right until the day before Christmas, right?
I like holiday season in Joburg because the traffic's all gone and you can just do whatever you want all the time. You go
Pretty
anywhere
much.
you want. Everywhere's empty.
Exactly.
Pretty much the best thing about Joburg.
Yeah, you're definitely not wrong on that, Chris. But hey, if you guys have just joined us, CS greetings, CS goes. It's me, Extremes, along with Gambit, the artist formerly known as Apocalypse.
Yo,
And finally has a Twitter handle. Definitely give him a follow. I'm sure he'd
I
appreciate
did it.
that.
I even retweeted your thing. That was my first retweet. It was quite exciting. I only had to press one button.
And then, of course, the usual co-conspirator, Profeci. You're here too. How you doing?
Fine, thanks to yourself.
Fantastic. I'm feeling pretty good, although a bit hungry because we were just recording the NAG podcast, which is only coming out on Friday, but already doing it now. So I've actually been doing this talking into a microphone thing for quite a while outside of this. So let's hope the voice holds together.
Well, you can't drink water because all the water's out in Joburg, so you're going to have to just ration yourself. I'm down to my last glass. I'm panicking. When this is done, I'm dead.
The water's out. Oh no.
That's why there's beer.
This is true.
Yeah, this is very true. If you guys are hearing some weird high-pitched noises, that's Chris's mic, but it's okay. We can deal with it. Don't worry. There's nothing wrong with the stream except for the people that are on it. There's something wrong with all of us in various ways because we love Counter-Strike. Or there's something right.
Can't really dispute that.
Indeed. Cool. So I think we'll get going into the show, guys. I'm feeling a little unprepared compared to usual because usually I've spent a lot of time looking at the notes and this time, as I said, doing the NAG podcast. So not really as prepared as I would have liked. But I think the opening thing that we could talk about is something in SA called Ballistic Masters, which was just announced yesterday. We don't know too much about it, but it's a South African CS:GO Cup for 30,000 Rand. So I think that's a good thing. I mean, another small cup. They usually do Battlefields and Dota. They've added CSGO in there for a slightly lesser price pool. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's really nice that we got another thing on the agenda. And the nice thing is that this one is it's online one, and it's schedule your own games in your own time. I think, so, from what I saw on the website. So you arrange matches within a set time period, and then you submit the scores. So it's a little bit like ESEA, but for South Africans by South Africans, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Sean, thoughts on it?
I mean, I was involved with it in the Dota side. It's a top bunch of guys running it. So I mean, I think it's nice because we get another event running the, just popping up, and they say there's a LAN possibility for later in the year. So I think if we get lots of support on the online section, and we get another LAN, I think that's great. I mean, they certainly aren't going to be the biggest, but we don't need more big tournaments. I think the small ones where you can,
you don't need more big tournaments. We need 40 big tournaments.
The thing is, you don't want 40 big tournaments that you all have to prep for and run an 8-month long league to play. That kind of thing. The way that Ballistics Masters usually runs is about a month at most, and then they sort of have the finals. And I think if they can do that with the LAN, I think that'll be perfect, because then you don't have to have this hugely long online section, get absolutely nothing from it except maybe just a seed, and then finally pitch up the LAN and then get knocked out on the first day. That just doesn't seem a lot of very, very worth it to me kind of thing. So I'm glad that they might have a LAN. I'm glad that they have at least an online section, because it's more CS that we can watch. And I do know them from at the very least Dota. I know that they've done Battlefield as well. So I'm glad to see them finally hop over into CS and add another tournament to the log.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to bring up a graphic of it, but it's actually fairly basic, so I'm not going to do that. They got a nice logo, I guess, but...
Just go to the website, ballisticmasters.co.za, and check it out for the homies that don't know about it or haven't seen it yet.
Exactly. First prize 15,000 rand, 10,000 rand for second place, and 5,000 rand for third place. Does DC even get out of bed for that little money?
Well, yes. Any money involving CS:GO, we're all up for it. So that's our source of pocket money for the year.
You guys are really like the Virtus Pro of South African esports.
Let's ask this question though: who turns 30 next year?
Nobody. We have officially on the 4th of November hit all 30 plus in DC, so we've put an age limit on.
Wow.
So
I
sorry,
because
guys.
I was gonna say, like,
No,
if there was still one guy left in DC that was about to turn 30 next year, you just have one huge party with the 15,000.
No, Harry was the last man standing, and he's 30 plus now, so that's where we are.
Oh well.
Right.
I think you guys can still have a post 30 celebration.
I agree. I think we should just now, from this point onwards, take all of our prize money that we win and just have a party at every single event, just after party, just DC money.
Well, it certainly would work, I think.
Well, I mean, just to get back to the original subject for those who's joining us, Ballistics Masters, the new tournament announced in South Africa for CSGO, happening in February, I do believe. So definitely check that out. If you're a team, go sign up for it. Show them some love. Show them that the CSGO community is more ravenous in its support of the new competitions than the Dota and the Battlefield ones. I'm sure the Battlefield guys are pretty pleased that there's finally a cup for them of some kind.
Yeah, I think Anthrax will be very, very chuffed.
Yeah, I think he would be. Except I'm going to twist his arm and get him to cast some CS with me. There's no going back to Battlefield, bro. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Not on my watch.
He's got to agree to that, though. Let's see that happen.
Yeah, you're right about that. I'm probably jumping the gun a little bit, but let's see. We'll definitely keep an eye out on how that's going to be. I think the thing that we do need to talk about a little bit is IEM Oakland, actually, because that was a super exciting tournament. I don't think we got any of the predictions all that right, really, about it. I mean, again, if you look at the pure facts of the matter, how it probably should have played out, it really didn't. Nip threw a spanner in all of the work for every person
Absolutely.
predicting.
It was quite interesting that they threw that spanner in really early on and then took it all the way through. I've got all of their games up now. I think they were a little bit lucky that device was missing for Astralis, but they, like the Reddit subreddit said, that when you get those games and those opportunities, you really have to convert them, and they did that, and they did that throughout the entire series. I don't think the other teams looked on their top form, but again, I think IEM Oakland shows you the power of one player. Obviously, Rez stepping up to the plate, and then everyone else playing around him. So if you look at the scores, and Rez's scores in particular, absolutely astonishing throughout the entire weekend.
Yeah, I mean, he really was a beast until the final.
Even in the final, I mean, he didn't. Okay, let's have a look at it. I had it open now. He's still right up there for basically all of the games. And really, I mean, can't say he had a bad. He was MVP of the tournament. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is, like, he was a bit quieter in the final, but it wasn't like he wasn't terrible in the final by any means. It's just like he just wasn't at the level he was before it. But I mean, hey, when you have Forrest chilling there and like, okay, now's my time to shine. I think Brez is like, I'm okay with that. With that.
If you look at Cobble, he got 24 bombs just behind Forrest on 27. That was on Cobble. And then Inferno, he top scored.
Bring it up for the guys to see. So.
And then on the third map, he got 19, and he was second in terms of his rating. On the fourth map, okay, he dropped off. He got 8 for 19, which is a bad map. And then on Cash, 18 for 17, which is just over a 1 KPD, which is not bad. So basically, he just had one bad map, which is Overpass. But to me, it shows you as well that NIP as a team has had a bit of time now to prepare. You could see their strats were crisp, solid. They've played a while as a team now with Draken and Rez, or Draken, and after watching the games, I don't feel like they played astonishingly well. I think there was a little bit of the other teams gave them an opportunity and they converted, as opposed to, holy cow, Nipper playing the best CS we've ever seen.
Yeah, no, I do fully agree there. Like, especially if you look at the final or certain of the map picks, I think especially Nipper being allowed to get Inferno, which SK clearly is not good on yet at all in the semi-final.
And
then in the final it was Cobblestone, which FaZe gave them instead of Nuke. I mean, that's the thing. Like, there was a lot of debate about whether FaZe. I mean, FaZe could play Nuke, but Nip is also strong on Nuke, so maybe it's just taking that gamble. I would have actually gone for Nuke myself, but clearly FaZe tried to just throw a spanner in the works, which did not work out because they are horrendously bad at Cobble.
Yeah. But geez, Nip. Also, there were 1 or 2 rounds on Cobble that were really close that they won that they really shouldn't have. The one Rez was like 1 HP, and he still got another entry frag and things like that. But basically, Cobblestone was, and a lot of the final FaZe were playing 4v5. If you look at Carrigan, 9 for 21.
Yeah, he got 3 kills on the first map,
3 for 16, 12 for 18, 12 for 12, and 11 for 18. Just absolutely trash. You know what I mean?
And that Cash T side was also horrendous to watch because it just looked like he's like, we're forcing up. It's like, why? Why are you forcing up? Like, yeah, you have the best players in the game, but at least have something that you can, just like some stupid strat that can allow you just get onto the bomb site and plant, and then we can work from there. But the problem is, it's just like, let's force up, rush into the site, die. Okay, let's do that again, rush into the site, die. It's like, guys, all you need to do is plant a bomb once in 3 rounds to have money so you can save, so you can actually go at them, with like full AKs, AWPs. But no, it's just rinse, repeat. Just so many forces, especially on that Cash second half, and just did not look good for Carrigan, especially because that's when your team that's when your IGL should be the one like calming the team down, like saying just chill, let's do this, and it just felt like he wasn't making the correct calls at all. And then, as you mentioned, just having a nightmare of a fragging performance as well.
Yeah, and speaking of player statistics, what I found quite interesting is, again, Cold Zero with his massive ratings, but this time they're losing. So I'm starting to wonder whether or not his game style just lends himself, or the support players around him lend himself to picking up frags that are not necessarily the biggest impact frags in the game. And if you see on Reddit right now, right near the top, the absolutely brilliant post by someone. It says, since everyone is ragging on Taco, I decided to watch his pod for the entire NIP series to see exactly what was going on, and the results are in. And he puts an incredibly detailed post together of almost every single round of Taco and what happened and how he played. And it's quite incredible. So I would suggest to anyone out there that watches this kind of stuff about CS, if you really want to see CS analyzed in depth, and it'll give you an indication of what you should actually be doing when you're watching demos. That is the kind of analysis that you should be doing.
Yeah, always watch a single player, watch what he does across the whole map. I mean, this is taking it really far, going across all the maps, but it really does inform a lot of what you understand about what a guy's doing. I mean, you could see, for instance, going into ESL Africa, how Energy had definitely been watching what Sonic did because they completely neutralized him. And when we were watching the demos, we were like, wow, if somebody watches what he does every round, it's pretty easy to stop, right? Turned out it was.
I think actually that's one of the fundamentals of competitive CS, and the more gets more important the higher level you go, is being able to watch and analyze a demo. The problem with watching a demo is you're going to analyze it at your level of competency. Right? So if you watch a demo and you don't really have a great game sense, you're going to miss like 90% of what's going on. So it's quite a tricky thing. Obviously, the more demos you watch and the more CS you play, the better you're understanding what's going on. So something that may seem absolutely stupid or daft to you may have had a thought process behind that's probably pretty brilliant. Or, there may be a blatant mistake, but how do you know it's a mistake? Like, how do you know what he was doing? So I guess that's, with demo watching as well, you can't just say to a guy that's played 200 hours of CS, go watch demos, you'll be brilliant. It takes a long time to understand what's going on. And demos are tough. It's really probably the worst part of practice, is sitting watching a demo, because you got to watch it invariably about 6 or 7 times. Look, you can skip through some of the save rounds, but you're going to watch it from someone's POV, or you're going to watch a breach, and then you're going to watch from another POV, then you're going to see what they're doing, and then you're going to watch again to see, wait, I missed a buy. It consumes a huge amount of time. And I think in South Africa in particular, we're pretty lazy surrounding that aspect of the game.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, as you mentioned, is also you don't know what communication is being done. It's like for you, for instance, you'd know if you're going over mid cache and you don't see certain things. Like if you see a smoke in a certain area, you'll know, okay, this is what's happening now, because it's years and years of that being grinded into you that you know when, like 90% of the time when people throw that smoke, it's for some reason. A new player is not going to know that kind of thing.
Exactly, and exactly that with communication. What's quite interesting, especially if you watch your own demos and you see a mistake, you can see by watching it. Obviously, you have the benefit of being able to see where everyone is and everything on the map. You should be able to see what your teammates should have known. And then if you think back to your game, you're like, did I tell him that there was one going to A main because I should have heard him? And that's when you start refining the smaller aspects of your games. Like, we should have known that was a fake. Why? Because we heard ARPA. Let's give Cash, for example. If you hear it's like late in the round, things have settled down, everyone's used utility, and you hear smokes going down on B, but you hear ARPA zooming on A. Is the ARPA really going to be the lurker? Probably not. You should call that it's going to be an A hit. You know, that's
except if it's
not many
energy
people pick up.
and the ARPA is middle. Then he's definitely lurking, right?
Or they've completely decoyed you and it's Connie with a scout. He's going to jump shoot the guy on the side, but that's a whole other story. But you know, there are those very, very small details that you can start picking up and working on. And if you watch demos, you like, we should have known that because of X. And that's when your game sense starts improving. And your communication, because you're like, I should have told my teammate that. Not necessarily we should have known. I should have told someone as well.
Yeah.
I think let's...
No, I have heard that the best place to start on demos is actually watching yourself. So yeah, that's a fantastic point to point.
It's terrible. Don't do that. It's a horrible idea. It's devastating.
It is devastating when you watch and you go like, wow, I'm a literal retard. What am I doing?
Yes.
It was the worst for me, like when for a stage before I started entering, like when I played Lurk, because like watching yourself watching an angle for 1 minute and 30 seconds is the worst thing, because like you do need to watch it because you need to see what the rest of the the opponents and what your team was doing. So you can fast forward it a little bit, but you kind of have to watch it to see what everybody was doing. So did you time it right? Did you make the right decision when the side hit came in?
Absolutely.
You know, it's like paint drying, dude. It's the worst thing.
Yeah, that's why it's always better, if possible, to download a demo of the whole match and watch POV yourself, because you have that more information than just watching yourself, which is useful, but not to the certain extent. I mean, like I used to watch myself, and if you really slow yourself down to like slow speed when you're about to enter contact, tells you a lot about what you're doing in terms of movement, aim heights. And I used to have a bad habit where every time I thought about using a grenade, I would draw it. So if I wanted to smoke, I'd pull smoke and gun again. If I was thinking about flashing, I'd flash. You know, even if I was just thinking about it and not going to use it, I'd like kind of cycle the grenades as a habit, like, you know, to check myself. But then what happens is you end up getting stepped a lot with a grenade out, and you're wondering, but why? I wasn't even planning on throwing the grenade. But you only picked it up when you watch yourself, like, I was thinking about using a grenade. Oh, that's why I keep drawing it. And when you become conscious of that, you can start to address your errors and mistakes. But again, it's a massive amount of time.
You're one of those bastards when you drive a car, like you're planning to turn left, so you start drifting left. Are you one of those people?
No, I'm very aware of bikes on the road, so I'm pretty good with
that. Always used to trigger me so much when I was riding my bike, dude. It's like I'm just filtering between the cars. Everything is cool, and this dude is just starting to like. But you know, you're a biker.
Absolutely, but you know that's a good point of habits that people may not necessarily pick up in life and or gaming. You know, I mean, there's probably a million things you do in every aspect of life that you're not aware of until you see it. You know.
Yeah, well, I have this habit in videos that now everybody will see now that I mention it, that I tend to pull on my shirt quite a bit for no apparent reason. So now you guys are going to notice it. What's this? Because I've actually noticed it like 6 months, 8 months ago when I looked back at myself and I'm like, oh my word, I'm so triggered by what I'm doing. But I've tried to stop doing it, but it still happens, see?
It's the thing is, like, it's the best way to improve at anything is to watch yourself, figure out what mistakes you're making repeatedly, and then start working them out.
Absolutely. But again, you know, it all comes down to levels, because I suppose if you pick up levels on a lower level, then you fix those, then you get better, and then you can find like more detailed errors and things. It's a constant iterative loop of refinement, I guess, and that's with everything, you know, with your job, with whatever you do.
Yeah, no, that definitely is the case.
Absolutely. So there's some top tips for guys starting out, or guys who further down the road who don't watch demos. Watch demos and watch for your tendencies. Watch for your opponent's tendencies.
Or don't watch demos. We love free money. Please.
Whoa. Okay. Jeez. Look at this guy.
Flames.
Yeah, indeed. I think let's rewind it a little bit in IEM to actually talk a bit about those semi-finals, actually. Because, I mean, going into them, there was, of course, as you mentioned, Chris Astralis didn't have device for the first game. He hopped off a plane and wasn't really at his best yet. I know he had some health scare as well. They even went back home to Denmark earlier because of his health. So it's probably even a good thing that maybe for them, that they didn't make the playoffs. But they should have been a lock, didn't make it. I think that had a bearing on the tournament. The actual brackets, the way they worked out, I mean, it just overall, it seemed really kind of, again, counter to one's expectations, I think, with, you know, what you would expect in terms of who's going to go through. So I'm just going to actually see if I can pull the bracket up for people. Where is it? Okay. How do I find the bracket on HLTV? I thought it was easier than this. Okay.
Usually you just, you should be able to find it. If you open up the link,
trying,
then
guys.
you just click on IEM Oakland.
Yeah, that's actually where I'm
failing,
at.
it seems.
I am failing, but let me bring it up anyway so you guys can see, because then I'm just going to be looking to the right for no apparent reason. So, I mean, the Mongols are the guys that we expected not to make it. That's expected. Liquid, I kind of thought they'd do better than coming last in the group, really. But, you know, they've got Steele. He's the new guy in the team. I mean, he's a great player, but it's still early days for them with the lineup change. So it's not the end of the world. I mean, a lot of teams do better when they change lineups. I mean, as SK did, but Liquid not really working out for them. G2, I think, is the major disappointment here. I mean, I think everybody predicted them to make it out the group, if not almost win their group, aside from FaZe being there. That, I think, is a huge disappointment.
What did you think there, Gambit, about G2?
I don't know what is wrong with the French teams. You know what I mean? Like, on paper, these guys are still absolute monsters, and they are just not performing time and time again. And everyone ragged on NIP, and now NIP have won a tournament. Everyone ragged on VP, and VP have won a tournament. You know, so what is going on? Well, like, what is wrong with these guys? I don't know. You tell me. Like, DC won a tournament, everyone's ragging on them. So it's difficult to figure out, because, again, on this, there seems to be not a hell of a lot wrong with their strats. The executions are well timed. You know, breaches are good. You got Shocks, who seems to be playing better than he's played in a long time, and they're just not winning games.
I don't know. It just feels like they still haven't figured out that economic game. It's like it's just too many force buys, when it's like they have the smallest of chances if they don't force buy, but because they're so good at force buys, they're like, let's just force buy all the time. And it's just like, guys, just give yourself at least a small chance of making it. But it's like they just don't seem to catch on to that, and they just end up throwing away games that they should have won fairly simply. I mean, like the Renegades game, I think that was basically thrown away. Gambit, I think, did they lose to Gambit? I can't remember now. But yeah, I mean, I remember.
Pretty, Gambit. Jeez, I've got all the scores now up here.
Let's pull it up again for four guys. Result.
It's messy play from team, like, especially because they won Malmo with good economic management, and since then it's been like,
game was really close, eh? It really was.
Yeah. So, but again, I mean, in like, you know, reasonably, if you maybe play that out a couple of times and don't allow them to force buy all the time, they should at least win that.
I know they did take it against Gambit. It was in overtime.
Yeah. It's just like, knowing how good G2 is, you just expect a lot more from them, but I don't know. It's just weird. They have such a good team on paper, and it's just they constantly put themselves in a position where it makes it so hard for them to win.
It's bizarre, because I mean, you know, they go on, in any other day in any other tournament, they would have beat Renegades, and they would have gone through above Gambit because they beat Gambit in overtime. It's just a bizarre slip up from them again. You know, but if they'd won that game, who knows? They could have gone on to win the tournament, right? If NAF doesn't drop that 30 bomb against them and go absolutely ham, then it's a different day, different tournament, different game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was also the other thing. I mean, Renegades are actually a much better team than they used to be. So we were talking about it last week, that there could be a potential banana peel for one of the big guys to slip on, and it actually did turn out that way. I mean, they're looking good. I mean, maybe they could have made it out the group as well, but overall, the group structure, the round robin thing, with the new overtime rules where you get 1 point less. I mean, if you win a normal game, you get 3 points. If you win in overtime, you get 2 points. And if you lose in overtime, you get 1 point. So I mean, it's trying to reward people for, taking a game to overtime and
Yeah.
just narrowly losing. But the thing is now,
It's a nice idea, but I don't know if it really works out that well on paper in terms of seedings.
Yeah.
But it is quite a cool idea. Like, oh, you had a really, really tough game, you lost in overtime. Here's a consolation point.
well, I think it's probably coming in ESL Africa next year, because ESL Africa runs on Pro League rules, and those are the new rules for the season of Pro League. So
Like, I don't mind it in Pro League. Like in Pro League, it's fine to avoid just like the insane amount of like draws that you can have. So I'm 100% fine with it in Pro League, but I don't like it at an actual LAN, because I think, especially if you're doing round robin at a LAN, which I don't like, it makes things a little bit messy when like when you're trying to like work out, because it's like one team can basically win, say, 5 games, or let's make it a bit more easy. Let's say one team wins 3 games on in overtime, and they can still lose out to like a team that's basically won 3 games against crap teams. It's just like, okay, we got 6 points from beating the top 3 in the group, and then some other team can beat the worst 3 in the group, and there we go, they're out,
Well,
and they're
I mean,
ahead of you. It's just like,
they could be 2 teams in regular time that are bad and get 6 points. I mean,
like I just don't like it. I just genuinely, like, I just think it doesn't. It's not the best way to reward teams.
yeah, I kind of felt that it was a little flawed. It's great for the BO2 online thing, not so great for a round robin offline where there's 5 teams. You don't need that kind of tiebreaker thing to actually happen. And I mean, what kind of crazy world is it where you go to triple OT on an offline game and get less points for winning it than if you won it in regular time? I mean, that's just insane.
Against the best team in the world.
Yeah, that is just insane. I mean, that was against Astralis against SK. And what? They get 2 points for beating them in OT after coming back from, I think it was 14-7 or something. It was some
Yeah.
That was probably the best game of the whole tournament overall. Like, I didn't find the final as sort of thrilling as Epicenter. I don't know about you guys.
I didn't get to
watch
watch.
It was pretty late. So I watched the first map couple, and I watched just the beginning of the second map, and then I went to snooze. But it seemed pretty exciting. I watched just highlights of the VODs and things like that. There was some good moments, but again, I don't think the build-up was like that massive to the final. Didn't seem like, oh my goodness, this is a game of the century.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So let's look at the actual playoff games then. Let me just quickly get there. So it was what SK. Where is it? There we go. SK Optic was the first one.
Cloud9 phase. Oh, SK Optic.
SK Optic, Cloud9, Gambit.
Yeah, let's start with SK Optic, because I mean, we haven't really mentioned Optic yet. So, I mean, that was a quarterfinal, because SK didn't win the group as we expected. NIP won the group. So SK against Optic. Optic finished 2nd place in the other group, and I mean, we didn't think they would make it through. I still don't think they should have made it through.
Absolutely stomped when they came in against SK.
Yeah.
They got slammed, ground into powder. I mean, Fur just destroyed them.
Was the first map like 16-1? 16-2? Ouch.
Yeah. I mean, we mentioned it last week. I don't think Optic is going to live at the... Like, they might make a quarterfinal every now and then if they get a nice bracket. Like this one, especially if you looked at how... Like, we said last week that Group B felt like FaZe, and then a lot of teams sort of in that kind of area where like there's a lot of banana peels that you could potentially slip on. Optic did well enough to beat the teams put in front of them. So you can't deny them getting out of the group, but like there's no world that I could see current Optic beating SK. It's just like their map pool isn't deep enough. They don't have the fragging power, and they certainly don't have the strats to go up against SK right now. Like I think you could pair just about anybody else in the brackets against Optic, and then they probably would have lost. Maybe not as badly as they did against SK, but I don't think they would have won.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other quarterfinal, Cloud9 against Gambit, and that was a 2-1 to Cloud9. So I mean, I don't think that's necessarily an unexpected result either, because Cloud9 have been on a relatively rich vein of form. Gambit always performed pretty well on LAN. I mean, they could have probably won it. I mean, it wasn't that far apart. If you look at the first map, went to OT, Gambit took it there. Then you had 2 16-11 results for Cloud9. And Gambit are not as strong on Cobble as they used to be. I mean, they used to be, under Zeus, one of the very best teams on Cobble. Here, taking a fairly comprehensive defeat and then losing on Mirage as well. Like for
And
them,
if you look at also the stats in the game, I mean, look at Skadoodle had an absolute cracker 2 games in a row, and then Mo not so much. So if you're just comparing firepower orbs versus orbs or even rifles, they're getting outgunned a little bit. So
Yeah.
Cloud9 doing really well, actually.
I mean, Hobbit doing well is really what Gambit needs, but the problem is, as you say, without the rest of the team there, it makes it very, very difficult to say that they're going to succeed. Like, Mo is that X factor, you know, like when he goes big, you should be winning the games. And the problem is, if he's not going big, you at the very least need Adren and probably Fitch to be doing some work. And Adren's just hasn't looked good since the major, really. And that's been a big worry. Is that
could that be the in-game leading that he's having to do? Do you think it's having an
I mean,
impact on his
Dozier does the
performance?
in-game leading, does he?
Well, as far as I know, Dozier is calling early round, Adren is doing mid-round stuff, but I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. Like the team, they have. I mean, they're constantly getting at least decent rounds against just about every team they play against, right? So they're always getting like 10, 11. So it's not like they're getting blown out, but it just feels like they need a drain
someone to go off. Yeah, someone's got to go really go take the other team on. Like I think Mo's got to be, like you said, Mo's got to be the X factor in that team to step up and really put some numbers on the board.
Do you think maybe the expectation of Adren is a little higher than probably it should be, considering his performance at the major was so good, and you know he isn't always that good. I mean, he's usually the god with 100 ping, but that's online, right?
I mean, I'd say there was a lot of debate as to like whether the first 6-7 months of the year he'd legitimately be a top 5 player in the world, given the numbers that he was putting up. Like he was consistently doing what Hobbit was doing in this series, and he would do it game in, game out. So Adren really was a very, very good player, but it just seems as though since the major and he's had to move back to in-game leading, which he said always he doesn't enjoy, it just feels like he's sort of like tanked. And as a result, Hobbit's putting up the numbers, but you don't have anybody else. And you can have one guy doing well, but unless you have at least 2, it makes it very, very difficult to get through games and especially win tournaments. So, it really is a pity. And if they can find a way to get Adren firing again, I think Gambit is going to be a lot more dangerous than they are even right now.
Yeah, especially if Hobbit carries on his form. I mean, he's stepped up. But hopefully it's not a case of someone else stepping up and then he sits back into support.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But at the moment, I've always got 30 bomb in regulation, ending on 36 at the end of the time, at the end of the overtime. Then 26 kills on the second map, which is on Kabul, and then on Mirage, he goes in with 20 kills again, which is he was top scoring him and Dozier. So just consistently being way on top of the teammates.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Hobbit with the 1 ring, it seems he just is finding things in every game.
Pops around, he runs around invisible. So
yeah, it pops the ring on, like it shows up behind you, wrecks all of you. I mean, he is looking legitimately like a world superstar. I mean, there was thoughts of him earlier in the year where it's like, oh, he's had a few good tournaments. He's burst on the scene towards the end of last year as well. Can he sustain it? Apparently can. I think he is the best player in the team now. It used to be Adren, but Hobbit is legitimately, I think, a
I thought it was, honestly, I thought it was like 6 months ago. If you asked me, I thought next it's going to be Mo and he's the next superstar. The way he plays with that AWP, and you know, he's like a crazy AWP. His movement is out of this world, but it just hasn't transpired that way.
Yeah, just a bit too inconsistent. I mean, Cloud9, though, props to them. Skadoodle really showed up at this tournament, so he's been quiet in probably the last 2 years, really, if we want to be honest about it. But he had a really good tournament overall. I mean, the firepower really coming to bear for the team. They're playing the Puggy style, and it worked for them at this tournament. They got the right kind of opponents, I think. But we'll talk about them a little bit more here in the playoffs. I think let's talk SK Nip, which I think, you know, for me watching it, definitely did not expect SK to go down to Nip. But I think watching that first map, Overpass, Burr got away with a lot in the first 7 rounds. He was destroying them towards bathrooms and towards Fountain on Overpass, getting really aggressive. And from there, Nip just seemed to suddenly click, okay, we know what he's going to do. We're going to wait for him. And he literally spent the rest of the game dying as he was just running at them, basically. It gave them an entry kill from that point. They came back from 7-1, I think it was, to actually winning the half, 8-7. And from there, it sort of set the
they 16. I think they 16-2'd them over the rest of the game. They were 7-0 down, and then they won 16-2 for the rest.
It was 69. So right, it was. Yeah.
But I mean, I think it was Thorin that said it after the game that, like, you live by fur and you're going to die by fur. Like when he makes those pushes and they work, they're going to work. You're going to win a whole game. But when he's constantly putting you one man down, like you're going to need crazy levels of play to keep yourselves in that game consistently, because it's always like, oh, we're now playing a 4v5. So if they split to either side, we're completely stuffed.
What's interesting to me is it's almost like the duality of the game. There seems to be two separate games running along. So the one is like, fur, go do your thing and run away. The other one's like, hey, Taco, flash and Cold Zero, pop flash him or grenade him or bait for him. So there's like those two different ways that they're looking for entries the whole time, unless Fallen's walking in and AWPing, because he likes to try peek quite a few angles. But it's quite interesting that, why don't they do something with Fur where they put him with Taco and see if Taco can't help him? I don't know.
Like I always classified as like the sword and shield, is that Fur's going to win you a game, but Cold Zero will never lose you a game.
True.
So Cold is always going to be putting up the numbers. You just need somebody else, like anybody else, to just give something, and Cold Zero is already putting up enough that you'll almost always be in contention.
Yeah. If you look at Cash, like the rest of the team didn't really have to participate. Cold Zero could have 1-on-5 and won it.
Yeah.
Yes, that was just some craziness.
That's like, yeah, that's like old Hellhound numbers in some crap team.
32 and 9 plus 23.
Guys, stay in spawn. I want to get an ace. Just stay in spawn quickly. Wait, I'm going.
But I mean, that's mental levels from Cold Zero, but that's what we expect from him. I think on Overpass, what was a little unexpected was Exist actually being near the top of the scoreboard, 23 kills just above Forest there. And I mean, Exist actually won a clutch where he did a spray transfer towards long on A site, which actually I think started the long road to the comeback for them. Gave them a little bit of hope, because up until that point it was like they were taking pain big time from SK.
Speaking of spray transfers, how's that get right spray transfer on Cobble on the site?
Oh my word, that was just. Yeah. I think I'll try and find that to show actually on the final. That was just insane.
The best part is he doesn't even realize he got it, because he shoots at the first guy, flicks to the second guy. It's the first guy's still alive. It's like,
oh wait, no, he's dead.
He's dead. It's just like, no.
I mean,
it just makes you sad.
Yeah. So in this game, like it felt like SK were trying to be super aggressive the whole time, trying to base off Fur. Fur never stopped pushing for the entire game. Like it didn't feel like they made that adjustment, and I kind of would have expected Fallen would, but the problem is Fur he's a rabid dog. You can't contain him. You got to let him go, and most teams can't contain him. Nip contained him, and SK just didn't seem to have an alternative to it at all.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, especially on the Inferno game, like Fur's consistently had problems at B. We saw those huge problems when Fur and Phelps were on B, where they would just constantly push down Banana the whole time and you could exploit it ruthlessly. But even right now, like they have Fur on B, and it's just, if you watch that the Nip game against SK, like it's just like, okay, we're gonna go B, we like leave, a lurk at A. Get Right obviously had that pretty crazy lurk where he got the one kill pushing through CT spawn at the end to finally kill off the game. But it was just like, because SK was so worried about over-rotating, that they just sort of pinned 3 guys on B, and by the time the rotates are coming in, it's like, well, now you're in a 4 versus 3 in a retake on Inferno B site. Good luck. That is an impossible site if the enemy knows what they're doing. It's just like, doesn't matter how good Cold is, if he's never taking the start fight and he's always walking into a retake, like even Cold Zero is not going to win those fights consistently.
Yeah, but still, what was quite interesting to me as well, I actually did watch that Overpass game, but I didn't see the rest, is that Nip actually managed to convert where SK were putting themselves at disadvantages. Now, that is new to me in terms of Nip and the way that they're playing. They're actually managing to convert these advantageous situations, and like even Forest rotating and just getting those taps of guys he did with a deagle, he did with the rifles on the A side, coming up in there and just doing serious work. That's showing a bit of confidence, a bit of like, I don't know, maybe it's an inclusion of Rez and Drake and just playing and guys actually hitting shots where they're not like giving up hope before even coming into the retake. So they were punishing them for mistakes. It was good to see.
It was also interesting to me that the play style out of Nip, they weren't really doing anything tricky in terms of execute. They were just playing for the trades. They were playing together. They were playing for the trades and playing as a team.
Yeah.
And
even the
it
cities,
was
when they started throwing
fundamentally
those
good
rounds
CS.
together, they didn't switch it up too much from what they were doing in the beginning. Like you said, yeah, they just dropped back. They weren't super aggressive. They didn't use like these crazy pop flashes or something. They just played good, solid, fundamental damage control CS. They must have watched out demo.
So that must give you some hope that kind of CS can work then, right?
You know, I like to see it because it's not based on anything that's cheesy or like out of the box or something completely different. It's just good, solid fundamentals and when you're playing well all together as a team, you're winning games, and that's how it should be.
I like the little nervous look as you said that.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's go to the other semi-final. That would be Cloud9 versus FaZe, and NLG's
This was a
cream
gorilla
required.
stomp.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really was a gorilla stomp. Like, you'd expect Cloud9 to actually be decent, especially on train, which I think they were 7-0 going into that game, and they'd beaten some good teams on train, and then FaZe was just like, no, we're just going to play the skill card, and that just got ugly for Cloud9. Like, they got hammered in that series. Like, it just did not look good to anybody there, unfortunately. And I mean, you can say what you want. Like, Cloud9 is a good team, but there's a lot of people that have called them sort of like the NA version of FaZe, and you just, like, when FaZe starts doing that on train, you can't do a whole lot of anything. Like, everybody was wrecking them. I mean, Carrigan was close to top fragging, and when that's happening, it's just really not a great look for your team.
He actually
and
did top frag train.
Yet
Carrigan,
he had the top rating, not the top frags.
Top rating. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, Guardian top frag. But let's talk about how good Rush's aim is. Holy crap!
Yeah, no, that kid is pretty good.
I think he's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't post the biggest scores, but I just think his aim and mechanics are like almost as good as Stewie's, and you got two of them running around the team. It's incredible.
Rush is the entry, is he not? I think he's the entry. It's like a duo tandem with Stewie. Yeah. I mean, the problem with like an entry is, it's like the games that you go huge on, like you'll win a whole game just with your entry. But, like,
yeah,
and then the day when you're running into FaZe on train and they're just wrecking you all day long, it's like, I mean, like, the thing is, I will say the one thing about Cloud9 is that none of them did terribly on train, especially. Like, you could all see them putting up numbers, but
even
unfortunately,
it's just outclassed.
I mean, even in the overpass game, like, nobody was completely falling apart. It's just that FaZe just has those games where, like, doesn't matter how good you are, they're just better than you across the entire lineup. And it's just like, okay, well, we can't go B because, there's Nico sitting there, and like, we can't go A because it's Guardian just wrecking us with an AWP. So it's like, it's a horrible situation. And when they have those days, you just kind of got to let FaZe have it. You can't really do anything about it. So I don't think Cloud9 played badly at the tournament. They actually did pretty well. They just happened to run into the FaZe that we all expected in the finals and didn't really see outside of their maps.
Those two games, yeah.
See, now that's an interesting point from you, Sean, that, FaZe and Cloud9 have a similar playstyle because they've got all these aim stars, this puggy kind of, I'm going for a pick, guys, hold my beer sort of thing that these guys will do. But that always, if you run into the right team with the right approach that neutralizes your stars, then you're going to have an issue. And that to me is what we actually saw in the final between Nip and FaZe. Like, FaZe, man for man, are better. There's no disputing that. But their approach to the game failed.
Do you think it does come a lot down to the skill gap between the teams? Actual player for player mechanics?
I think skill can win you games that you shouldn't win, but strats will always keep you in a game. Like, I don't think strats are going to, like, win you the entire game, if you get what I'm saying. Like, you have to have at least some level of fragging, but, like, fragging can just, like, win you something that you should have no business winning, whereas strats will, like, you'll never lose a game off of strats, but it's not always going to, like, win you straight out game. It's going to be like, you can get to like 10 rounds with strats, but you're going to need some kind of like random bullshit once a round or once every 3 rounds to like just put you guys over the top. I think that's definitely, or at least the way I think about CS is that you need something to just give you a baseline, and then your crazy fragging will either put you like way over the top, much like FaZe, or like a lack of fragging can like just make it close, but you still lose in the end.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, it doesn't matter how well placed the smokes are and how good the pop flashes are. You still got to convert by hitting those shots. And it just seems that FaZe, again with Cloud9, to me, just hits those one taps faster than they get one tapped.
Yeah, this is true. So let me actually bring up the stats again for the final. I think that might be a good one. And in the final, it did go all 5 maps, which in a BO5 doesn't often happen. It happened at Epicenter as well, but it's interesting to me that it happened here again. And like, I don't think the bookies would have backed FaZe, NIP that much against FaZe. Like, if you did bet on NIP, you probably made some bucks.
According to the bookies, NIP going into the final was 20 to 1.
Wow.
So
you made some bucks. Wow.
you made some bucks.
Wow. Okay.
You made some big
I wouldn't
bucks.
have taken that bet, eh?
I wouldn't have taken it either.
I don't think many would. I mean, poor old Sonic made that bet on the internet with
yeah, he lost a
I
nut.
think he's regretting it big
well.
time now.
Fine, you got 2, so one left.
No, he just pulls to one side. Wheel alignment is out.
No, he's streamlined now.
A uni nut.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So.
Yeah, but honestly, I wouldn't have taken that bet because I did feel like NIP had a little bit of a free pass on the way through with Astralis and Device missing, and it just seemed to me that they didn't have the biggest struggle getting to the final, and then subsequently didn't have the biggest battle in the final.
Yeah. I mean, like, you could clearly see that I think NIP's a lot of NIP winning their games had a lot to do with Threat being able to call the timeouts, and he clearly gave them some adjustments to make, which made a lot of difference in the end. And the maps that they lost, like, they got slammed. Like, FaZe did them dirty on the maps that NIP lost. I think the Inferno was like an 11-4 CT half, and the Overpass was like a
16-6, yeah, was Overpass. Yeah. 13-2, ain't no good night.
Yeah, that's just like, that's like, you can clearly see, like, when FaZe is on, like, NIP can't live with them, but when FaZe was off, NIP did definitely have a chance. And again, it's like NIP had their issues, but they still somehow seemed to pull through, and it just felt like FaZe wasn't good at adapting. And again,
like, on second thoughts, I'm actually not that surprised because, okay, FaZe had like 1 or 2 off maps, but NIP are professional Counter-Strike players playing 10 hours a day all together after making roster adjustments. They should be able to convert these kind of scenarios. Everyone acts like these guys hang up their keyboards and they come out of a 5-year hiatus and all of a sudden they won a tournament. No, these Oaks are playing 10 hours a day just like the rest of the professional scene.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I will say is that they made good use of a big Forest performance. So, like, if NIP's going to win a tournament, they have to have at least Forest doing very, very well. And the fact that they had Rez pitch up big time as well, I think it really puts them in a good situation. Whether that's consistent, we don't know. Forrest has always notoriously been the guy that's sort of like, I'm going to take this tournament off, boys. Don't stress about it. And then the team doesn't look so good in the next one. So we'll have to see whether they can do well at the next tournament.
The Rez one is interesting to me because I've actually casted Rez in probably 6 or 7 matches. It was last year. So, I mean, we're talking probably 12, 13 months ago in ECS. And that was in Epsilon. I mean, he was in the team with Barbar and Disco Doppelin and Drake and I think it was Freddie B as well. And in that team, I mean, we've seen Freddie B be touted as a potential star. We saw Draken pulled in as a potential star. Disco Doppelin looked really good when he played for NIP for a while in the previous season of ESL Pro League, and then obviously he went through to Fnatic and now is at Godsend again. He looked like the star of the team a year ago when I saw that. Him and Draken looked the best. Rez didn't look at all impressive. He just looked like an entry fragger who kind of did what he did, rewinding, fast forwarding it, shall I say, again from that rewind. I mean, we've seen him be touted more in the last few months as a potential star. But, like, usually for me, I recall, like, seeing Simple in late 2014 and going, wow, this guy's amazing. Then you see him you see him in 2016 and he's a god, Like, I don't have that same thing about Rez. I was like, oh, he knows how to use a mouse. That's about the most I can say for him, I saw enough of a sample size to not really be like, wow, and like Disco looks so good, Draken looks so good. I mean, Draken actually looked exactly the same. Hits all the crazy shots, doesn't hit the angles that he's posting. It's quite ridiculous. A year later, he's the same sort of player.
Same
Rez,
thing, yeah.
I don't recognize what Rez is doing on the server
No,
to what I was
he
casting.
played so well. Like the bits and pieces I watched one overpass game and I watched the one cobble game. On cobble, he was making space where space shouldn't have been made. You know what I mean? And not being particularly cheeky either. He was just stepping out and hitting crisp headshots and doing the right thing at the right time. He played really, really good fundamental CS and hitting everything. Just crazy.
I mean, headshots for days. I mean, it felt sometimes like you're watching vintage Apex,
like
man.
So fast. Like his steps were just like, just like shoulder peaks, and he was shooting and getting the headshots. I was like, geez, who's this guy?
Yeah.
It really was that
nutty stuff.
sort of dominant entry performance where he's just getting first bullet headshots. He's moving perfectly, and you could see the confidence in the way he played. 'Cause, I mean, I recall, I think it was on Cobble where he was like three times in a 1vx on the B site, and low HP in a couple of the occasions, takes the peaks, gets the headshots anyway. I mean, it's just so confident. Really vintage performance. That's something I want to show you guys actually. I'll just bring up here. This was something mentioned by Patar, the owner of HLTV, and we're going to look at HLTV for this. But overall kills in the series, FaZe actually had more kills in the series than Nip did, which illustrates what you guys were saying earlier about just how dominant their two map wins actually were. That they actually got more kills in the series than the guys who won the series, which is just insane. Like I don't think you see that happen. I've never seen that happen before in a series of this sort of importance. Just crazy.
Very, very crazy indeed.
So, and if we look at it overall, let's say, I mean, Vintage Forest performance, he looked great again. He really looked good.
Really good, and like you said, confident as well. He was also taking duels all over the place, stepping out. I mean, he wasn't playing passive. But I think you kind of get onto a momentum role with that as well. If you're hitting the shots, you carry on taking the shots, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of confidence of doom, which is it's good to see. But you have to have players playing around you to be able to do that. So I think it was good overall for the team.
And Forrest is one of the the most fun players to watch in CS. Like when he's on his game, it's just like everything. It's just such smooth play to watch that guy play.
He has the best movements probably in the world outside of probably Kenny S, who's maybe the only other guy I'd say who's similar in movements. I mean, it's just like it's hot knife through butter, moving through that server. It's like everything is it just looks so good, and he does it so stylishly and offhandedly. Some of those shots, it's like, oh, dead.
Yeah.
Love him. I was always a huge Forest fan, but it's been hard to be a fan for a lot of people, to be a fan of Nip with the way things have been going. I think we got to give a lot of credit to Threat as well. The coaching, I mean, we were saying it a year ago, is that what he was bringing to the team was making a huge difference back then. It seemed like they dropped off. I know he wasn't available for a while. He was finishing his studies or something. But having him behind the team, as you said, Sean, made a big difference. It seemed like the timeouts were taken at the right points. They made the adjustments they needed to. They continued from that thing of a year ago of being really good against force buys. And it felt to me like FaZe really played into their hands big time with the force buys, because Nip was so methodical at shutting that down, about not getting overly aggressive early round and losing rifles. They played together. They made sure they cleared the angles and they killed the guys with the pistols. And what is usually a strength for FaZe with the crazy force buys, it buried them here, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it just sort of played into Nip's hands in the end. Which, just one question though. I mean, obviously, Chris, have you guys ever thought about bringing in a coach to stand behind you guys at events?
So, no. We, it's really difficult because you've got to find someone that is willing to be a coach that's played at least our level and doesn't want to play anymore. It's almost like we're waiting for a generation of coaches to go and stand behind players, because it's a huge amount of time and effort. Being a coach, it's almost more time you got to spend than playing. We actually had King last year coach for us. It made a huge difference. We got a lot of our material from him, and he would sit and give us strats and lay them out and say, you do this, you do this, you do this, and it really helped. But it's a huge investment in terms of time. So I could see it being very useful, but it's a full-time job for the coach.
So when do the 5 coaches at DC join the other teams, though?
You see, when when people start watching demos and start beating us.
I thought that had already happened, man. Like Big Five Goliath. What?
We'll speak about that when we hit the ESEA stats in a bit, actually.
Yeah, we'll definitely cover that for a little bit. There's an interesting question here from Bumyu in chat. I think maybe we'll address that a little bit later, so stick around for that, about who is possibly the best CSGO player in South Africa right now, because we are going to switch to talking about South African stuff very shortly. I mean, Blast Pro Series is the other international thing we're just going to quickly have a look at for you guys. That's coming up really soon. Starts on the 24th, so this week. And
Friday.
Yeah, the marketing has been tremendous. Been loving it on Twitter, the videos and stuff they've been putting up from the broadcast talent, which has been really fun. Some of them have been absolutely savage. Loved Yanko's. Definitely check that one out. But looking at the tournament overall, again, a very stacked tournament. I'll just quickly bring it up here. Astralis, FaZe, G2, NIP, North, and SK. And I got to say, NIP actually winning IEM makes this a better tournament. Because honestly, seeing the NIP name there before made me go like, I don't know if they should really be there. They haven't done anything for a while. Now the fact that they're champions of IEM, they're on a high. They're going into a tournament against a lot of the same opponents. I mean, North obviously weren't at IEM, but overall,
yep.
it's a really entertaining looking tournament. I'm really excited for this one.
I think there's a huge amount of pressure on them to now continue their form and prove that it wasn't just a once-off and everyone else was having a bad weekend. Really massive for them to keep up momentum and build into this event.
And I think the biggest worry for me here for NIP is that they've announced all of the maps already for the rounds. So you can go like hard scout. Okay, what did NIP do at IEM Oakland on train? And then you can go and have a look and on overpass. And I think that, especially against a team like North and a team like Astralis, I think with them having that kind of knowledge about what you're going to do on certain maps is going to make life a lot more difficult for NIP than it would have been at IEM Oakland.
It's true, and a full strength Astralis, allegedly, I'm assuming the health issues are sorted out, are definitely more scary. And also on home soil, this is also where we got to remember, it's in Copenhagen. It's Refresh Entertainment, the guys who own Astralis, actually running the tournament. So I guess they're not throwing for skins or anything like that, but it does sound
no match
like
fixing happening there.
Yeah,
but it's it's a huge tournament, a big prize pool, so it's going to be. I think it's going to be some great CS.
I think it really will be. It might be one of the better tournaments of the year, just because also we're going to see longer series as well. You know, as far as I know, it's BO3s the whole way, so that's going to make it more exciting.
No, it's best ones in groups.
Oh, you're right.
With only 16, it was still BO1s.
I thought it was
BO3s. It's BO1s in groups, but you play everybody else in the group, and then the top 4 go through, and then it's I think best of 3s from there on out.
So.
But the difference here is that we know what maps they're playing. So it's different to like the regular, it's a random BO1 that you decide on the day so you can screw around with your opponents. Like, it's like DC. It's like, we know that DC is playing Bravado on Cash in 2 weeks' time. So both teams can go like hard scout. What is the other team going to do? Yeah. So it's I think it's going to give us a better view of what the teams can actually do, because now we're going to see, like you've got 2 weeks to prep for Cash against Bravado, so you'll know all of their tricks and tendencies by the time you get there. So I think in theory we should see a higher level of play. It's just, is it actually going to happen? Is the real question.
So Astralis SK is the opening game, and that's going to be exciting. I think, just based on how exciting their last encounter was at IEM, that's going to be a really great match.
It's on Inferno though. Like, what?
I don't know. I mean, that could actually.
I don't understand why SK plays Inferno though. They're so bad at that.
B-site is an abortion soul, despite Phelps not being there. I don't know. Like, I think that could be a leveler there. Actually, I mean, that's a map that isn't Astralis's favorite. SK aren't that good at it. Why would they pick it? I don't know. But there we are. I mean, the tournament goes until, is it Saturday? Sunday? Saturday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's shorter. I really thought the final would actually be on Sunday. But okay, apparently it's Saturday. So it's a very full day of CS on Saturday. It's going to be an exciting tournament. I'm interested to see if the format works out, if everything goes to plan for refresh. And if everything goes to plan, of course, the newly Audi re-sponsored Astralis will win, right? You know, we'll give you the prize money.
Audis each.
Yeah, can you imagine that? Like, here's your giant check. Okay, thanks. Take it back again. It's like,
yeah.
What?
Thanks, guys.
But there was also, of course, VP at the ES Sports, the organized tournament epicenter. So this thing happens in esports hilariously somehow, but it really does. So next thing to chat about, I guess, is Apocalypse is here. I mean, we don't have Apocalypse with us tonight, but you know, I mean, that guy's got good hair.
He does. I've heard he uses like what do you call it? Gel or something in his hair. It's
Gel or something. I thought it was like in Stranger Things where the dude uses the Farrah Fawcett hairspray, you know, like, I mean.
Possibly. The problem is, yeah, these days my hair's going further back this way, further back. So, but it's fine. It saves me on gel and shampoo, so that's okay. It's just coming down my face now, so that's all right.
Well, I think you still have more hair than Explicit does right now, so you're still good.
Just about a little bit.
Rip, dude. That's yeah. Anyway, you got more hair than me as well, so you know, hence the hat, I guess. Cat out of the hat, rabbit out of the hat. I don't know what it's. There's a saying in there somewhere, and there's an ESEA game happening somewhere, somehow at any point, pretty much all of human history recently anyway, since the ESEA has been going on. People are playing it, just not seemingly in SA, but they are playing it in the CSGO Open tournament. And you guys are there. Number 4, damage
control.
Speaking
of ESEA, they finally upgraded their UI and things like that. They've got a new client out, which is a lot more modern. It doesn't look like it was written in Windows 3.1 anymore. Yeah, so it's actually pretty nice.
It's improvement.
It's much better. They've done quite a big overhaul, so the developers have been working hard. But we almost didn't play this one. We got a late entry. We were a week late after closure. We were going to take a bit of a break, and then 28 other teams signed up. So we were like, okay, well, let's go again. Here we go, boys.
So I remember you saying you weren't going to do it. So
yeah. We're going to take a bit of a break, you know, after. It's been quite a long year. The scheduling has been quite a disaster with all the, not a disaster, it's been fun, but it's been quite tough for everyone to do all of their life things in the meantime. But it's been quite good. So if we look at the bracket at the moment, Energy right up there on top without a loss so far. Bravado 1 loss. Guess who beat them? And to me, I think we should just really be focusing on the top 8, right? That's where people are establishing themselves. And Big 5 and Goliath right up there. Obviously, for both teams, pretty devastated that they didn't get to play at the end of the year this year. But it's good to see the teams are not playing the short-sighted role again and just playing for the next tournament, which is in a week, a month, 2 months. Teams are actually starting to think about longer-term things, and you can see why with, I mean, you can see how with both teams approaching their branding and sponsorships and, you know, their caps and loot boxes and stuff. It's really nice to see guys having a slightly longer-term vision with regards to their gaming. So next year, I think that Energy and Bravado are just still a little bit ahead going into the first quarter of next year, but I think just behind them are Goliath and Big 5 right on their heels. To me, I would actually place Big 5 a little bit ahead of the curve, just above Goliath right now. So that, to me, is your top 5. So DC no longer the gatekeeper of the top 3. I'd say we're right on there on the 5th spot. So Energy, BVD, Big 5, Goliath, DC forms your top 5.
Indeed, I'd absolutely agree with that assessment. I mean, there's a couple of teams that aren't here, like, I mean, XTC aren't in it. And they look...
Skeletons is there.
They looked pretty good. Yeah, Skeletons, who's 3 XTC players. The actual XTC looked pretty good in the Masters as well, so I'm sure they would be there or thereabouts in the top 10. What was left of Veneration, not really there either, because they broke up. I know some of them are now with, I think it's, I'm trying to remember who the team is.
White Rabbit.
Oh, there's White Rabbit, yeah, but I'm trying to think of Unreal's team. Who's that now? Because that was also ex-Ventus as well. I can't remember, but he announced it on Twitter. Let me actually check what it is. But there's probably 3 teams, I'd say, it could also potentially be top 10 that aren't playing in this right now. So take that under advisement, of course. I'll quickly check who Unreal's team was again. I know he mentioned it on Twitter. I even said good luck, and I can't remember who they are actually. But overall, the top 10, I think more or less what is expected. Going into the, I mean, it's going to be quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals, correct? So I think that starts.
Yeah.
It's what, like Wednesday, then a Sunday, then a Wednesday for the
Yeah.
actual final.
Something like that. A question, Gambit. You guys played XD fairly recently. How did you guys find them? Because I mean, at the start of the season, they basically went, I think, they were like 10-0 at a stage, and then have only really lost to the big ticket teams, Energy Bravado and yourselves, and I think one other. But how did you find XD when you were playing them? Because they looked much better.
We actually played them this Sunday in a game, and unfortunately for them, Maki couldn't connect. So they used Asterix, but he played alright, so it was alright. They used him as a sub, so they could argue that they didn't have a full strength team, and it was a war. It was an incredibly tough game for us to win. It was we won on the scoreline quite comfortably, but it was one of those games where it was an absolute battle to win that game. They were playing really well, hitting insane shots, putting pressure on us all the way through the game. So they're definitely starting to put pressure in the right places. They're getting a lot better from what I remember playing them a couple of months ago, practicing against them. They've definitely leveled up recently, but like last couple of months recently.
Do you think they still rely too heavily on fragging, or do you think they've added enough strats to really cover that hole that they had?
Their strats weren't too convoluted, which is maybe a good sign, but they did execute. The timings were right. Their rotations were good. You know, they weren't getting caught unawares by lurkers. So as a team, I think they're playing pretty good CS again. I think obviously there's room for them to put in some more convoluted stuff and some more, you know, fakes in the game and you know, varied up. After we started getting on top of the game, we carried it on. They didn't really have that fallback, switch it up. This is what we're going to do, completely change it. But that you develop over time. You know, that really comes with a lot of time. Like to get to an energy or BVD level where you can play completely passively and stomp and then switch it up and play completely aggro takes a huge amount of time and or skill.
So to talk about Unreal's team, it's actually Pulse. Bemu's right about that one. It is Pulse. The lineup is obviously Shaz is still there, although we know she's sick at the moment, and our best wishes go with you, Shaz, while you're undergoing treatment and everything. I hope you come out of it better, and of course Gambit will sign your butt as promised. So I mean, this is a running joke we've got going. So. She started it though. I mean, she's got a thing for your ass, Chris. What can we say?
What can we say? But I see on the ESEA that the Pulse is registered. I just clicked on the team, but the active roster's only got the 3 on ESEA. So I wonder if they're going to take that spot up.
They're not actually just playing at the moment. I think
no, it's forfeited.
They've been forfeiting. So it's Shaz, Defiance, Rush Me Please, RMP, Trogi, and Unreal. So that could be interesting because I mean that's some of the old Southern Five. It's got some Aventus. It's got Shaz. There was obviously in Pulse at the time. She's also ex-Ventus Red from earlier in this year. So I think that could potentially be a relatively strong team. I mean, it could be top 10 there. Elite Pro is the other name that's being mentioned in chat. And having a look at their page, I mean, the only thing I've seen, and I do recall this was our recently retired, unretired, then retired, now unretired again, Bananas. He's signed on with them as a he's not sure whether he's a coach or a player, but he's the only guy who's actually announced. So we don't know what's going on with their team. It seems like they've just picked up MSI as a sponsor, which is pretty big. So maybe they do have some big name players waiting to be released. But their page actually says, stay tuned for an official announcement on all our rosters, and that was on the 8th of November. So haven't announced anything yet, but they seem to be making waves. They also got RDK and Dota 2, so I'm clearly looking to suddenly jump up to the top. And then there's also Sinister 5, who's got a pretty good young team potentially. So I think there's probably a good 4 or 5 teams knocking on the door of top 10 going into next year. And I think that's exciting because usually to me in SACSGO, I can't remember in the last 2-3 years where there's been that many teams that could potentially be competitive with each other. I mean, I know there is a gap to the sort of top 5, but below that, it's quite a free-for-all.
Yeah.
So
I think it's quite interesting going into next year as well, obviously depending on how many tournaments get announced early on in the year, because a lot of these shuffles always tend to happen in South Africa around this time, November, December, January, shuffle, and then the momentum completely dies out because the first tournament's like in April. Which
is not the case now. I mean, we're talking ESEA still now for the next few weeks, OCS in January potentially, which was announced, and then we've got Crucial Ballistics Cup in February, DGL is starting in February again. ESL Africa is starting a little bit further into the year.
WSG.
WSG will be in January as well,
We've heard rumors. We've heard a
Yeah.
rumor of January. We don't know the dates though.
It kind of has to be though. I think is like you're running out of months until one can actually. I mean, it should be January, February. Let's just hope all the scheduling works out again. Because if all of these things are all happening at once again, it could also be a complete cluster. So let's hope it isn't.
No, let's hope it is. I mean, no, it isn't. It isn't. We don't want teams playing choosing.
Cool. So, I mean, talking about WESG, the news there's that coming out of Black Poison, he seems to be handling that. He also handles ESEA as well. He said on Twitter, I think it was on Friday or Thursday last week, slots for the region have been increased to 2 for all games, but have been split. Dota 2, 1 slot north, 1 slot south. CSGO, the same, 1 slot north, 1 slot south. And we've also got Hearthstone and StarCraft with the same. So it looks like the North African guys will get another chance, which I think they're happy for because they don't get a lot of competition up where they're at that isn't European. So I think potentially we could end up with that Limitless and Energy or Bravado going through on all of this. So that could be...
That's
awesome.
going to be spicy. It's going to be spicy because last time we had to send teams to... So that's the only thing. I don't know if WESG is a LAN or online.
I think it's online from what I've heard. But again, like we're operating on rumor here, guys. So don't take what we say as
we don't
as
actually know.
We don't actually know. So yeah. I mean that's interesting. I think if it is that a North African and a South African team go through to WSG, so it's 2 African representatives. I think that could be good. It'd be even funnier if like we see an Energy Limitless or something again at actual WSG when they go overseas. So that could be hilarious. And of course the Algerians will be looking for revenge there because they did make it really close at one point. So yeah, I just wish I'd hyped the Energy come back more in that cast. I was so tired, man. Like I've only been waiting for 2 days to cast, and then like technical delays, like So, but hey,
I mean, we talk about a BVD and Energy, but I mean there is a couple of other teams, Goliath, DC, Big Five. They could all make a run at that spot. I mean, there's only one slot available, and I can guarantee you everyone's going to be prepping to get that spot. Yeah, because they all want that spot. If you can go overseas, and I mean, it's not that you're necessarily going to win at WSG, but it's at least that exposure that you can get. You can get more experience playing overseas, and I think every player, as Gambit will definitely tell you, every player wants to play overseas. You want to be on those big stages to get your name out there.
And wait a minute, don't we still have one more ESL Cup slot to decide?
I don't know because
we don't know.
Tournament hasn't actually been announced yet because like this year's tournament was only 4 teams, so we don't even really know. I think the problem there might be that ESWC in the last couple of years has been taken over by new ownership, so as to whether their direction is like an actual electronic sports World Cup or not, I don't know. We really have to see. I kind of hope it happens because then, if it doesn't happen, then obviously Energy have already qualified for a tournament in November next year that might not happen. But I don't know. I think that one's a little bit of an unknown, and I kind of feel a little sorry for the guys having, all the teams putting in so much effort to qualify for it, and then of course like there is uncertainty around it. So let's hope it comes right. Now the other thing we do need to talk about is Gambit's hair, which I mean. It's not as good as Apex hair, but it's not bad.
No, I agree. It's not bad. It's not bad. He needs to just change it up every now and again. It's getting a bit boring. Same hairstyle for 15 years. It's just not cool. Sorry.
Yeah.
Add a bit of RGB in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speak to G-Max.
I did that once. I put those. What do you call those things? Those white edges on the hair thing.
Plaids.
And then it was a disaster because I let it grow out long, so I had like this brown hair and like this white, like looked like vanilla ice. Oh Lord.
Wow. Okay. So, but I mean, if we're not talking about Gambit, Chris's hair ain't bad except when he looks like a bit of a like a sex offender on Twitter, like the picture I posted earlier.
Which one?
I don't even know where you got the picture on Twitter.
It was a picture actually from
Really?
from ESWC. Let me pull it up for you guys.
How do I see this?
Because you look like you're either looking at like the tastiest cupcake in the world or some really good-looking woman at that stage.
Yeah, let me pull this up for you guys so you can see what we're talking about. There you go. So this is actually a picture from ESWC. Thanks to Matt for the picture. He got you at the wrong moment there.
Oh, that picture. Oh, that picture. Yes, that's quite interesting.
Like,
that's the face you pull when you watching your own demo and you're just disgusted in life and you're just like,
yeah, I should not have done that.
Oh, jeez.
Cool. So, I think to answer the question from a little bit earlier on from Bimu, but I did a video quite some time ago. It's probably like the third video I ever did, or the second video I ever did. It was a little clickbaity in a way because I called it ESEA's best CS:GO players, and like the S in brackets. And I mean, in the video I went through a bunch of who the most skilled players are in South Africa. Spoke about Sonic, spoke about JT, and Fady, and all of the guys with the skill, the Hellhound, all of the names that come to mind. And in the conclusion of it, it had been just after Bravado got back from playing overseas in Mountain Dew Lane and in WESG. And overall, Black Poison was the best rated player for them, had the most impact, those sorts of things. And I looked at it and I said, quantifiably using stats based against better opposition than we have in South Africa, Black Poison had the most impact for BVD. BVD are the best team. There isn't anybody who's close to them right now. Therefore, Black Poison is the best player based on recent months. That's the way I went about it. And it was fairly clickbaity because I think a bunch of people probably, they didn't want to hear that because at the time, Black Poison was still roundly reviled for saying CS:GO was shit the year before on Facebook. So a lot of people didn't like him, and a lot of people didn't like that conclusion to the video because of what I'd said. But really, my conclusion in that was not to say that he's the most skilled, like raw mechanical skill, because like right now we can't really argue with the likes of Sonic and Domster, JT, these sorts of players. They are the most skilled guys right now, and if you look at consistency, yeah, they are some of the best players. I'd still say Black Poison has had some of the biggest impact on any team in ESEA this year with Energy. I mean, he moved from Bravado, moved to Energy, has had a massive positive impact on them. From being a really puggy team, they gained structure, they won the African Championship, they are, according to that, the best in Africa. He's still got to be one of the most impactful players. As to whether he's individually the best player, I don't think so, but in his overall impact in the scene this year, yeah, he is surely the most impactful.
Absolutely agree with everything you said, 100%.
Let's just cut that into a video.
That's exactly.
I think it would be.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's the answer.
I think it'd be pretty hard to argue that he's the most impactful. Best right now?
Sonic.
I don't know.
I don't know. Between
know.
Domster, Sonic, JT, right? Isn't that your top three to me?
I'd say Canny's made a late.
He's got to be in there. Yeah, I mean, he was really good after ESL.
I mean, I think Canny's made a late charge for it. I don't know if he's the best player of the whole year, but right now I think Canny might be the best player in SA.
I'd still argue probably mechanically it's got to either go to Sonic, probably Sonic, and then very close between JT and Domster, in my opinion. Just from playing against them, that's
JT and Domster, man. Like whenever you see them, like you don't register in your brain that you've seen them and you're dead. Just in
terms of your opportunity of getting fair fights or them converting an unfair fight into a kill, to me those are definitely your top three. Sonic, Domster.
It does look to me like Sonic's playstyle. I mean, I've casted him a few times lately. Again, I mean we've seen a lot of Sonic. But when he's in a 1vx situation, he never goes for a fair fight. It's just like he's such a smart player because he's got the aim. But then it's like, okay, he's fighting a guy in Banana. There's 4 people running down on him in Banana. He jumps on top of on top of the barrels and stands at an off angle, and the dude walks around the corner and he taps him. It's like he's not doing what a lot of other players do. Because I mean, JT would go for the peak and try to fight the guy.
Go for the peak, Sonic goes,
what in my environment is going to help me win? He's like freaking MacGyver with one nut, guys. I mean, he's an entertaining player to watch because you can see he thinks about what he's doing. I mean, if you guys haven't seen the video, I did an interview with him a couple of weeks ago that went up last week. And he's a guy who puts a lot of thought into the way he approaches the game, into his practice, into mental preparation, all the sorts of things that, you don't often hear from a player. Because usually when you talk to a player, the guy's like, I missed my shots at that tournament, things didn't work out. Sonic says, no, his mental preparation wasn't there, he wasn't in the right headspace, he needed to do this, he needed to do that. And that's a level of introspection you don't always see. And I think that's part of what makes him so good. To me, Sonic is purely based on his impact on the server and his overall package of skill and clutch ability, all of that. I mean, the guy could be a main AWPer in any team as well if he decided one day he wanted to do it. He's for me the best player in that sense, but again, overall impact on the scene, it has to be Black Poison. It can't be anyone else. He's made the most difference.
Yeah.
Cool.
Especially because it's multiple aspects. He changed an energy team that had very little tactics into a team that had a hell of a lot more. Then he took the team. Okay, they couldn't beat BVD at the start, and then all of a sudden they narrowly beat BVD to thumping them in a final. It's a massive turnaround.
And it was quite a thumping as well. I mean, best of 5 didn't go past 3 maps, so really didn't work out for them. And again, if you look at it, as I mentioned earlier on, Black Poison was roundly reviled. People did not like him because he said things about energy going overseas last year. The self-same energy that he's playing for this year, where he said that they were I don't know how he said it, but he essentially said that they were bad and they failed obviously at Copenhagen games against tier 3 teams. It didn't work out for them. A completely different lineup to now. But from that point of everybody hating the guy, he introduces ESEA to South Africa. He takes energy to championship titles, 2 of them. And you don't hear any of that anymore. It just shows your actions on a server ultimately are what you're going to be judged by, not what you say outside of it.
Absolutely. And I think we've got quite a small community, and fundamentally the people in the community respect the other people, the passion for it, regardless of how they do it. I mean, to me, sometimes there's certain players that irritate the living daylights out of you, and they're late for scrims and stuff like that. But they're all part of the same community, and we're all really passionate. So we enjoy seeing each other and catching up at LANs. It doesn't matter that the Oak knifed you online and laughed at you about it or whatever. That kind of flows under the bridge because we've got a small enough community as it is. There's not really that much room for these big beefs and animosities. So it doesn't really exist. And I've actually got a photo on my PC. I saved it. I'm going to show you. And it was earlier in the year at the EveTech LAN, and there was a server crash, and I think it was that stage, APG versus BVD, and the server crashed, and both teams went outside while the technical guys were fixing it, and they stood and they had a smoke together and they were chatting, or vaped, says the kids these days too. You know what I mean? And everyone just sat there, and they were in the middle of a final, 6 rounds in, and there was no worry. The guys just had a smoke together, had a timeout, went back and did the business. So I just think it's quite amazing, particularly in the South African scene, how we're pretty friendly with everyone. So, I don't think those kind of things where players ousted unless they're cheating or something like that would be there for long, because everyone shares the same passion. And if you're passionate about it, you gain the respect within our little community.
Totally agree. I mean, I've experienced it myself. People have hated me at various points for things that I've said. So, the wheel turns on the thing. I mean, we're all here to grow the thing overall. You're not always going to agree with what each other say, and we're going to have these fights, but overall we're all trying to build the scene together and make it bigger. It's really small right now. It's probably smaller than anyone really realizes. It's infantile, but we want to get it on its feet and out into the big wide world, hopefully doing what Renegades are doing, Aussies in America. Let's get some South Africans to America or Sweden or any of those places. Just to read the comment here from Bimu, Black Poison is a player that makes other people want to play good somehow. Whenever I play with Robbie in a pug, I just want to play good for some reason. Is that not because he's shouting at you? But no. Robbie can be quite abrasive in game at times as well. But I mean, he does direct the game, even in a pug or something like that. He is a fundamentally sound guy in terms of the way he thinks about the game. So I think we said pretty much everything we need to say. Any final things you guys want to chat about before we sign off on this one?
I think that's quite a nice note to end off on. You know what I mean? It's always interesting. I think we should keep it as a semi-regular feature. Just keep up with who's doing the best individually in the scene. Maybe it should drive a bit of competition for form and things like that. Because I think, as much as everyone says, it's about the team and teamwork and stuff, there is a massive individual impact that you can have on the game. Look at Rez. You know what I mean? I think pretty much transformed Nips win this weekend, just to tie the end of this episode up to the beginning.
Bow on it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important for players to push themselves to an individual capacity, like your episode of Sonic, where you talked a lot about how do you prepare, in an individual basis. A lot of that time spent by himself. So I think it's good for players, especially in South Africa, to push themselves, get their aimbots or whatever their particular thing is, take a jog around the block if you feel fitness helps your CS game. So we should do that. We should rank the guys up against each other at least once a month and see how they do.
That's actually an interesting one. I like that idea. And what has changed in ESEA CSGO, I must say, in the last 2 years is the availability of statistics. It was an exercise in frustration 2 years ago trying to find out player ratings or even, records of what your KDs were, anything like that. I mean, unless you saved your own screenshots, you would never know. Nowadays, ESEA makes it a lot easier. Bellowsoft is also the platform that a lot of guys use for tournaments. So the stuff is possible to find. I mean, as Sean and I found out when we were preparing for ESL Africa, some of it requires some intense digging and detective work, but it's still possible to find. You got to ask the right people because it's just that some of it's not publicly available. But what we can do is we can find the stuff out. So I mean, if there is interest in it, we can look at doing it. I think it's a good idea, Mr. Gambit. Or to use your full name, G4mbit.
Yeah.
So, Prof, any final thoughts or words there?
I think 2018 is going to be a very, very good year for SSCSGO. We've got the ESEA finals coming up soon. Actually, Goliath DC, that'll be on Wednesday at 8 p.m.
Oh, yeah, Recoil's doing
Wolf
that,
and Recoil.
This Wednesday.
Yeah.
Look at the facial expression. He doesn't even know.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. Time's away, so we might have to reschedule that one, or we'll play with this up. So we'll see.
Well, I mean, look forward to seeing that one. It's certainly going to be an interesting one.
Indeed, it is going to be an interesting one. I was actually going to cast it with Anthrax, but as it turns out, we were at a Nintendo event that we forgot about, so I managed to get Recoils in to do it instead. I'm probably going to be playing Splatoon, which I have no idea really about, except that it involves squirting ink everywhere, so I don't know. We'll see how that one goes. So we're not casting that one. We were hoping to do some casting on Sunday, but as it turns out, the games finish on Thursday. So there is no more Sunday casts happening. Myself and Anthrax are thinking about doing the playoffs from the medal state studios. It's just about the feasibility because, we all have other things going on as well. And of course, we are doing it for free, but we need to pay people to be there. So it makes it a little bit logistically challenging from that point of view. But we're going to try to make it happen for you guys. So definitely check out my social media at Extremes and also obviously Anthrax's social media. I think it's at AnthraxZA. We'll definitely update you on that. And of course, Gambit might actually for once tweet if he makes it into the quarterfinals.
I'll retweet it now that I know how. I know the button now.
We're winning, boys.
You sound so old, man.
Half of
now that I know the button.
Half of DC is retweeting these days. Can you believe it?
Unbelievable.
Now I'll start my entry fragger series over December if I have a bit of time.
Cool. I don't mind helping if you need some help there. But yeah, I think this has been fun. It's been CSGO Deeper, sponsored by Aperture PC. I didn't mention it that at the beginning, but I've mentioned it now. We're not doing any giveaways at the moment. I do actually have things piled up to give away, but I'm keeping them for myself because I'm greedy like that.
You need a Santa hat episode. Just saying.
I think that could be fun. I like that idea. You're the ideas, man. I love this. You're the ideas, man. This is great. We need to have you on more often again. You haven't been on for about a month and a bit, eh?
No, it's been crazy at work. At the office.
Too busy spending his spinnings, I guess.
It's not me. That's Microsoft. There's a Microsoft bug that I found in their authentication, which is keeping me busy. It's pathetic. Anyway, I'm gonna get back to that now.
All the boring things, eh? Wow. Okay. Not the best, but hey, I think this is probably the best South African CSGO podcast because it's probably the only South African CSGO podcast at the moment. So by default, we win. We're winning, boys.
Good job.
Cool, guys. So
it's exactly where we want to be, boss.
Indeed. First in a class of one. It's like playing for the MSSA. Anyway, CSGO Deep is sponsored by Aperture PC, and none of those views are shared by Aperture PC. Don't worry, sponsor. So I've been at Extremes. You can follow me on Twitter at Extremes. There's Gambit as well, who's been here. Follow him at DC_G4mbit. And then we've got at Profeci Gaming. Also give him a follow. But for you guys who don't follow any of us, and for you guys that do, send all the follows to Gambit. He needs all the help he can get.
Yes, please.
He needs motivation. He needs motivation to be more active.
Yes, he
Okay.
does. We're trying to teach him, but you know, he's bumbling and fumbling at the moment. You know, you think he's older than me, but he isn't. Cool, guys. Appreciate you guys watching. Have yourself a wonderful week, and we'll be back at you next Tuesday at 7. This is Axe Saying Axe Out. Cheers, guys.